Cathy, you are one of my absolute favorite people, and I'm so blessed that I've had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with you in the last, I would say 6 months, give or take. Even in December, we got to spend some of the holidays together,
Good.
talking about menopause and blood flow and hormones and all the things that we're going to be talking about today. And I would love for you to kind of share with me and the audience who are listening a little bit about your menopause journey and how it's even shifted over the last couple of years and what has been a non-negotiable for you in this journey.
Yeah, thank you. And likewise, it's great to see you again. And you are also one of my favorite people to have these chats with. I'm sure we'll get a lot in today. And I'm glad you asked about my personal experience because it's not something I've really shared a lot except for with friends and, of course, my naturopathic physician who I rely on for some support. And it's interesting that my experience has been a little different than most of my patients. I feel like I really did not have typical menopausal signs and symptoms in perimenopause. In fact, I felt like I was sort of at the greatest shape of my life right before I went into the transitional phase. And I look back now and I realize, yeah, I probably had some symptoms that I was glossing over because I was also doing elder parent care and had a busy life and a busy family and a busy job. But my experience has been different in that I'm now 5 years post-menopausal and I have had more symptoms come on, more of the typical thermoregulation, hot flashes, night sweats, weight gain around the middle, exercise intolerance. I've had more of that impact me post-menopausal than I ever did perimenopausal. My diet has been pretty consistent for about, I don't know, 25 years because I'm a nutritionist and I take that to heart. So I feel like my diet really served me well in that perimenopausal sign. But the other piece of it is something that you and I have talked about before is that there seems to be this light level of shame associated with women getting older. And I found myself falling into the trap of going, oh, you're just getting older. That's why this is happening. Oh, you're just getting older, but don't talk about it. Don't just blatantly divulge your age when you walk into a room kind of thing. And I think women still do that. And now what's happening for me as I'm talking more, as I'm doing more of the research, seeing how many women are in this category of just not really fully expressing themselves and their needs during this important transitional part of life, I'm more bold about it now. And maybe that is the benefit of age is that, now I have we hear the no more kicks and giggles to give, if you will. And I'm to the point where I'm just going to be bold and talk about it and embrace it and embrace my age and the growing knowledge that I am gaining and sharing and helping other women and younger women look ahead so that this transitional period doesn't feel like it has to be so secretive and doesn't have to be so, suffering.
I agree. I think the more that we talk about it, the more support that we get, not only from the women that feel safe to us, but also we get the right support, hopefully from our providers and our practitioners, whomever that we're working with. I love for you that perimenopause felt overall pretty easy. Has it felt a bit surprising, these shifts that have changed or that have been changing as of recent? I know that you've been so on top of it, but are you like, is this the thing like that
It
everyone's
has been,
talking about?
yeah, even though I know it has been surprising because I thought I sailed through. I thought, oh, I've always slept a little warm, so that's not a night sweat. Oh, I was able to exercise and have my body respond, physically perform the way I wanted to. And then when that shift started, I started questioning whether is this a hormone imbalance? Is this a brain imbalance? Or is this just the simple fact of aging? And I refuse to accept that aging has to keep us down. I'm a pretty energetic person.
Yeah.
But it was surprising because I really thought that, this broad term of perimenopause, I guess it's just not happening for me the way it's happening for other women. And aren't I lucky? Well, fast forward a few years and the signs came on and now I realize, no, I am just like a lot of women. And we all have our unique expression of this perimenopausal to menopausal change and the shifts in our body and the shifts in our brain function and the shifts in our immune responses and even in our mindset. But it did surprise me. And then I have to laugh at myself because it's like, well, silly, you actually know better. You talk about this all the time. You counsel patients all the time on diet and lifestyle measures. why did you think you were going to be different?
Mm.
And my great diet has served me well, but it wasn't the only answer for me, that's for sure.
Let's talk about some of your non-negotiables. When I think about you, Kathy, I think about, yeah, your vibrancy, your energy, but mostly I think about how active you are. You are very physically active. And I have a feeling, like me, you're like, I'm not willing to negotiate with some of these aspects of my life, even though I've had some changes come up. So, what have been some of the lifestyle strategies that you have pivoted on or doubled down on? And is there anything that you've brought on to help you even more?
Yeah, I think, the big pivot for me having a history as a athlete and a collegiate athlete and thinking that every exercise program or a routine I ever did had to bring out a hard sweat. I let that go. And I still like to get out and be, highly physically active with exercise intensity. But really, the shift I made was getting more into mind body exercise. And so lots of yoga, somatic yoga has been really helpful for me, and nervous system resetting in these really mindful movements. Every day, I do some grounding. Every day, I do some nervous system reset exercises. Every day, I make sure that I nourish myself before I nourish the world. I don't have children at home like you do, but sometimes it's easy to start nourishing somebody, whether it's like returning a text message or doing a phone call before I've even taken time to take care of myself. So the non-negotiable for me is that I'm first now, and that's my morning routine of drinking water, and whether I'm using, making an electrolyte drink or doing some meditation, doing the grounding, that comes first. And I don't disrupt that routine for myself. Every once in a while, there's a day, of course, where you have to step into action on somebody else's behalf. And I feel good about that. That's fine. But most of the time, I am taking care of my physical, mental, emotional needs first in the morning. That sets the stage for my day. And then the other thing I'm really no longer willing to do is work as many late night hours as I used to, because I have always had, a patient load. And then I also have this wonderful position at Berkeley Life. I could put in many more hours than I do, but I get away from the screens. I turn off. I'm not a big TV watcher, so I'm, doing things that are more mindful and not screen activated in the evenings. I make sure that I'm shutting down a work project. If I didn't get something done for the day, I can get up a few minutes earlier in the morning and start again when my mind, my body is fresher. In any way, sometimes we tend to just think, if I just power through this, I'll get this done. And instead, your work might be subpar, and stress level is still high. And then you wake up in the morning exhausted because you've simply not taken care of yourself the night before. So sleep hygiene is a really big piece for me. Everything from candling down my house, washing my face, oiling my feet, things like that are really non-negotiables as little pieces of self-care that I can do to keep myself centered in what my body needs every day.
Mm. I feel like this is the lesson for the ages in terms of nervous system regulation and self care. And I know you have a lot of other pivots that you implement, but why was nervous system regulation such an important part for you? Because I feel like this is the thing that all of us know we need to do, but so few of us are doing.
It is. That's the silly part is we do know, and then we do nothing about it, even though it's everywhere. All the social media channels are full of, nervous system reset protocols, 5 minutes a day. And those techniques work. They really do. So why it became important to me is that in the last 10, 15 years of my life, I did a lot of elder parent care
Mhm.
and a lot of travel to do that. Very stressful being somebody's medical and financial power of attorney, even though I love my parents dearly and it was my honor and blessing, not an obligation to help care for them. But it was some really stressful times of hospice care and parents who lingered into a really lovely old age, but maybe not with such a lovely quality of life. And I was doing my best to give them a quality of life that I felt like they deserve, but it was at the expense of my own health. And, as we know, you let stress run you down, you let your nervous system continue in this fight or flight mode, eventually things are going to start shutting down. And I'm fortunate that I've witnessed it in so many patients, so much turning on of autoimmunity when people are in that fight or flight mode too long and their nervous system and their immune system starts to falter and attack its own body. And I finally had to take a look at myself and say, you have to stop. You have to stop and rest, and you can't run at this pace and do everything you thought. So that became really important to me to start seeking what can I do to support my nervous system because you can feel it. You lay your head on the pillow and your ears are buzzing and your heart, you feel your heart in your chest more than you should, or that sign of laying your head on the pillow and feeling your heartbeat through your eardrum. To me, that's a really big sign that your nervous system is screaming for help and we need to listen to it. So that to me has been the reason, but also now how I help my patients going forward. It wasn't enough to say, you need to rest, you need to relax, you can't run at this pace. Giving patients tools to help them regulate their nervous system, everything from dietary recommendations, but also just lifestyle and these little bits of self-care. It doesn't have to be a fabulous 90-minute massage every week. It can be sitting down, bathing your feet in the tub and then applying some oil to your feet can be a great way to sort of damp down the sympathetic stress and bring you back into your grounded self.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing, Kathy. I know that you were taking on a lot of caregiver energy for quite some time. And there are millions of, I'm just going to highlight women right now. It's usually women that are caregiving for their elder parents. My mom is caregiving for my grandmother right now. And I have another friend of mine whose mom is caregiving for the grandkids and her dad, and she's in her 60s, and how much it's just, we can see it eroding her resilience because it's so much to take on.
Right. And then, as you and I have talked about many times, that resilience is what carries us into older adulthood with health rather than with symptoms and conditions that lead to, cardiometabolic issues. And so, helping women find that resilience, and yeah, not to take away from the male caregivers of the world, but historically and still, women are the ones in these caretaking roles and a lot of women are very, very dysregulated, nervous system dysregulated because of it. These are the women we're seeing those perimenopausal signs come on earlier and earlier. And unfortunately, I think it's happening to younger and younger women too. I see that a lot. The menstrual cycle may remain the same. So they don't think about it as perimenopause and they don't think about the stress relationship that's bringing on those signs and symptoms. And we can dive into what some of those look like in that early stage.
Yeah, let's pivot into perimenopause and even early menopause because as you mentioned, some women are going to get through peri feeling okay, and then all of a sudden in menopause are like, "Oh, this is happening." So we know that hormones are erratically declining in perimenopause, but it's the silent shifts that I am most concerned about, particularly women's blood vessels, their insulin resistance, their blood pressure changes, muscle loss. These are the things that I think about when I'm taking care of my patients, but also when I start to see women have a number of different symptoms and we're trying to connect the dots. Metabolic changes and cardiovascular changes are often at the epicenter of these symptoms.
Absolutely. I think maybe one of the silent shifts that doesn't really get enough credit is insulin resistance. And so we see women who, they're not really aware that maybe their stress responses and the subsequent dietary choices they make are leading to blood sugar regulation issues that then are slowly developing insulin resistance. Now we're going to see more oxidative stress in the vascular system. When there's oxidative stress and inflammation, what does the body do? It cranks up your cholesterol production to help, patch and repair what it perceives as, faults in the vascular supply. At the same time, estrogen is declining as women are aging. If those blood sugar dysregulation issues can lead to hormone imbalances that are, beyond what would have been naturally occurring with age, now we see a drop or those fluctuations in estrogen levels that contributes to reduced integrity of the endothelial tissue inside the blood vessels. And guess who resides there but the nitric oxide enzymes that help us promote nitric oxide, expanding our blood vessels, keeping our blood pressure regular, consistent, also regulating our heart rate, and so many other things in the cardiovascular system. But I think if we had to trace it back, it's the stress related habits that younger women are sort of thrown into. So let's just paint a picture of a 35-year-old woman, and her son's got the kids at an event that night. So what does she get to do? She gets to go to happy hour with the girls. And, happy hour with the girls is great. But, if that habit becomes regular and it's a way to cope with stress, then we're adding sugars and alcohol and poor quality foods to the mix. And now mom's still got to come home and take care of the kids before they go to bed. By the way, she didn't finish that report that she needs to have done at work in the morning. So she stays up late to do that. Now she's putting herself at risk of greater oxidative stress because she hasn't, improved that sleep cycle. Now she can't sleep because her nervous system is waking her up with all the thoughts and things. And she's also had a few glasses of wine that didn't really help her insulin resistance. So I think when we look at the modern lifestyle and women who, aren't we great? We can do it all. We can multitask. We can be partners and spouses and parents and career people, but it's at the cost of what is the lifestyle that we're leading to keep up with all that. And unfortunately, even in a lot of my healthiest friends, I see those patterns developing and they think, oh, it's just temporary. I'm not going to drink wine every night this week. But they do because it becomes a habit. And then those habits start to lead to those silent shifts and that cardiometabolic risk starts to go up.
Yeah, I think about all the offenders that you mentioned for insulin resistance. Not only alcohol, but maybe sugary drinks, staying up late, messing with your sleep. Like all of this is driving, it's assaulting your blood sugar and your insulin sensitivity. Even if you're not drinking, but you're staying up late to finish that project, like you're driving the stress response system. And the way that our bodies respond is they release more sugar into the bloodstream, right? So you're going to see these spikes. I always say that chronic stress is like eating a cupcake, except that there's no cupcake in sight. like, like the invisible cupcake that you're eating.
Right. How rude is that to get us
Yeah.
excited for that? And then we don't even get to enjoy that cupcake. I think I live in the Pacific Northwest, and I think what I see is, like the grande vanilla latte. I think I see that as the equivalent to
What is that,
the
3 or
cupcake.
4 pumps of sugar? Like,
I don't even know because I don't drink. But
I'm pretty sure it's like 2, at least 2 or 3
yeah.
pumps of sugar.
Right, and women are seeing that as sort of their, "Oh, I've been so stressed, I'm gonna reward myself." Well, not only are they spending like $8 on these things, that could have gone to, a yoga class or something, they're then getting that big sugar bomb, and it's just catapulting them into that vicious cycle.
I don't think often, one, we don't think about how offensive to our bodies a vanilla latte is. Even a small, not a grande, can
Yeah.
lead to our blood sugar. And I've tested this theory on so many patients and even myself, because it's one thing to kind of like check in with your mood after you drink something like that. It's another thing to wear a continuous glucose monitor and watch the numbers. Probably one of your biggest spikes that you'll ever see is sucking down like a frappuccino or a vanilla latte, and because it's just liquid sugar, it's just hitting the bloodstream at such a rapid rate. You're going to see a huge 30 to 50 point spike, if not more, depending on the person. But we have these offenders that are happening to the side, but as a result of being overstressed already. So not only is your blood sugar already spiked, you're spiking it even more. But this is happening in our 20s, in our 30s, in our 40s, and it's compounding over time. I think we think once we get into perimenopause, it's kind of these new issues or kind of new symptoms. There's a good chance that many of us, the way that we were living a decade prior or 15 years prior, that consistency of kind of, getting 1 less hour of sleep or 2 less hours of sleep or staying up to work, that all compounds over time till we get to this midlife transition, and then it all really comes up for review.
Yes, and I don't know about in your practice if you've seen this, but I'm seeing women in their 20s starting to develop hypertension and being put on medication. And they're told that, well, you probably have a family history, and that's why you are, your blood pressure is rising and why you need this medication. But in my opinion, it's really just the bigger picture of the stress response. And we tend to be younger women and not we think, oh, high blood pressure is an old person's symptom. And yeah, it's probably going to happen to me someday, but not now. So we don't check it. And I can't believe how many patients I talk to who go to see their primary care physician and maybe they're, 30 to 35 and their vitals aren't being taken at their primary care physician. appointment. And so, what kind of encouragement does that give a woman to take her blood pressure at home? And it can be cumbersome, and you can buy the little devices and all that. But we kind of have no excuse for it now because there are several apps out there that will take an average smartphone and give you at least a relative reading of your blood pressure simply through your finger. Now, is it accurate? Maybe not. But if a woman were tracking that every day and sort of using that app as a way to recognize that silent shift of blood pressure creeping up, I think that's a really simple tool we have. And then I'm just a big fan of always getting women back in touch with their bodies and feeling that. So if it takes an app to do that, great. If they will learn to test their own pulse and feel those sensations of, oh, I feel like I'm getting anxious. I'm going to see what it's doing to my heart rate and take a measure, a physical measure of their heart rate. And then, yes, having a home blood pressure kit, I think, is a nice tool for everybody to sort of recognize that sign that can creep up really quickly. And pretty soon there's an event, right? There's maybe a palpitation or an arrhythmia or something like that, that usually is the wake up call when those silent shifts in cardiovascular health have been going on for a while.
You bring up a very good point that this isn't just an old person's disease or condition. I think we think about breast cancer as being something that happens earlier and earlier. But if you look at the research, cardiovascular incidents or events are actually happening even as early and more often than we do see the 1 in 8 of us getting
Yes.
breast cancer. So I think it's important that you point this out. And yeah, if we are developing things like insulin resistance or polycystic ovarian syndrome in our 20s, or even, I saw, early stages of fatty liver disease in patients in their late 20s, early 30s. This was over a decade ago that I was seeing this. You can imagine that as another decade or two goes by, now we are seeing some major shifts and changes in your vascular walls, in your cardiovascular health.
Yeah, and that gets us back to kind of full circle to this is what I've seen too. I used to call her metaphorically, I called her raspberry scone girl. She gets up in the morning, she races to a coffee shop. They already know her order. She gets a raspberry scone and that tall vanilla latte. She's been out the night before, so she's a little tired. She's not hydrating enough. She gets to work, she cranks through her day, she makes it to happy hour, a couple glasses of wine, less than a, balanced meal in her days. And then the whole cycle, rinse and repeat, starts again. And I think this is where you were seeing that fatty liver disease because I was witnessing it too. Labs had come back and you'd say, okay, what's going on here? You're 27 years old. And why do your markers look like this? And then taking it, not just the habits, what's behind that, the stress and the stress response and what culture has taught us to do and society has taught us to do is sort of just to put a fun Band-Aid on it and keep moving faster. When
Yeah.
really, I think and I think that's back to the non-negotiable. At my age now, those grounding techniques and nervous system reset and somatic exercise and breath work and all those things are no longer negotiable for me, and I wish I would have been doing them since my teen years?
Mm, I agree. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you breaking that down. And I think about kind of the new way we're operating in terms of like uppers and downers. Your coffee in the morning and your sugar and then your wine down in the
Yeah.
evening. And that cycle is just driving inflammation and oxidative stress. But I don't think so many of us realize that it's having profound implications, profound damage to our vascular walls.
Yeah, I think I like to talk about oxidative stress as we're rusting from the inside out, right? So
Uh-huh.
you think about, you're driving your car down the road and you've got a rusty tailpipe. Well, eventually that rusty tailpipe is pretty much going to implode and fall off the car unless you replace it or take care of it. We don't have the luxury of replacing our vascular system. So we need to be thinking about this for the future. And I think younger people tend to think their resiliency is just automatic when really they're not feeling those silent shifts. And now that oxidative stress and that rusting from the inside out is going to be the future problem. And that's really my goal at this age is to get younger and younger people learning about their bodies again and women especially learning about what self-care really means, that it's not a spa day necessarily. It is these daily habits and behind all that stress reduction and stress management in a way that fits their lifestyle, but also, provides them resilience for the future.
Mm. I love that. That's exactly what we're looking for here, right? And if you weren't listening in your 20s and your 30s, maybe you really were kind of, dismissing it as whatever it was. And then in your 40s, or for some of us, maybe early 50s, when we enter this metabolic inflection point where symptoms are calling for a new level of support, we have to understand that lifestyle medicine is mitochondrial medicine, that
Yes.
we really need to implement these. And one of the things that you and I have talked about a lot in supporting our mitochondria is ensuring that we've got good blood flow. Like blood flow is everything.
Blood flow is everything. And again, let's teach our kids about blood flow. Let's teach younger and younger people what it really means to have optimal blood flow. Blood is the river by which we're carrying nutrients to all the tissues. We have red blood cells that are carrying oxygen around the body. We cannot fuel our mitochondria without healthy blood flow.
That's literally why we breathe. If anyone's ever wondered, why do we have lungs and why do we breathe? It's literally to get oxygen to the electron transport train so that we can make ATP. Like that is
And
the
be
name of the game.
It is. That is the name of the game. That's what keeps us energized. That's where we are today on the Energized podcast. Yeah. And so I think we really need to be teaching younger people this concept of how important blood flow is and where it comes from. As you know, I'm deeply researching nitric oxide every day of my life now. It is this tiny little signaling molecule that plays such a huge, major role in promoting blood flow, in keeping it consistent, in keeping it open and flowing, and all the other lifestyle things we do to reduce oxidative stress and stay hydrated. That's going to keep that river of nutrition and oxygen flowing without being sticky and sludgy and binding and creating restrictions. But realistically, this process of aging starts when we start living. We start living as an infant, and everything, we are starting to we're replenishing tissues, of course, but there's a finite amount of replenishment of our tissues we can do. So we have to preserve what we have. And I think that's the message that we need to get to a younger population.
I agree. I think that so many women consider like fatigue, cold hands and feet, brain fog, shortness of breath when they're going up the stairs as simply just aging.
Yeah.
And these are actually signs of vascular and circulation changes and not in a favorable direction, in
No,
an unfavorable direction.
no. And, you mentioned some of the really common symptoms. The cold hands and feet, I think, that's an early one. We know that our blood vessels get smaller and smaller and smaller as they get out to the peripheral tissues of our hands and feet. What's happening when you have cold hands and feet, it's not just that, oh, I'm always this way. You might be starting to lose some of that function of blood flow there. One of the things we know nitric oxide does is helps us rebuild and replenish healthy blood vessel supplies. And there's lots of studies on conditions like Raynaud's and neuropathies, things like that, that rely on the rebuilding of healthy blood pressure and blood flow and blood vessels at those distant tissues from the heart. And there's so much research on it. But again, it's something we sort of take it for granted that I'm going to be able to get up and my body temperature is going to be consistent. That's not the case when we don't have adequate blood flow. When we don't have adequate blood flow to those tissues, what's that going to do to your nail beds? What's it going to do to your hair follicles? What's it going to do to, all these sort of outward signs that we can see? And I think equating the blood flow to all these things that people really can witness about themselves is an important piece of the education.
No, I agree. And then I think the other piece that women are not being educated on is that when hormones begin to decline erratically, particularly estrogen, it's going to have an impact on our cardiovascular walls and our overall cardiovascular health. And we do see a decline in nitric oxide. Why is this concerning for us? Why should we be mindful outside of, again, experience these symptoms as we're writing off as aging? Why is this the thing that we should whether it's shortness of breath or we're noticing cold hands and feet or fatigue or brain fog, or we just don't have the same workout recovery, why should this be something, a footnote that we should mark?
Yeah, it should be a footnote we mark in big, bold letters and highlighter because we don't get that capacity back unless we really work at it. So estrogen's declining. That turns down regulates, turns off the function and the production of nitric oxide in our blood vessels. What that does is starts to allow there's less blood flow. We start to get platelets that aggregate. We get debris, call it spent white blood cells and other pieces of damaged tissue that can build up and cause plaquing and lead to future atherosclerosis. I unfortunately know too many women in their 40s in the last 5 years who have had a stroke, and I know you have some familiarity with this as well too. And so I think it's really important that we make this distinction because once that endothelial tissue, where the nitric oxide works to both preserve the tissue, but also to open up the blood supply and open the blood flow, unless we really work at it with diet, lifestyle measures, we aren't going to get that back. We are not going to have hormone levels at age 55 to 60 that we had when we were 20 or 25. They're not, even with hormone replacement therapy, it's not going to function the same. So not only are we not able to recover that capacity to make nitric oxide and keep blood flowing, the other thing estrogen is doing at that time is also impacting the flow of not just your hormones, but your neurotransmitters too. And we can definitely relate the decline in estrogen to not only potential heart health risk, but also we can relate it to some of the common symptoms that come on early that we don't really recognize as related to loss of estrogen. That's things like the brain fog and the lack of mental clarity, because now we have a disruption in the balance of the neurotransmitters in the brain that are helping us with cognition, with learning, with memory, but also with some of the other more common signs of perimenopause, our mood, including anxiety, irritability, that sort of spicy, cranky feeling you get around your cycle.
Oh, you mean
Starts
the
to
kind you heard earlier from me?
And yes, so we know that estrogen decline plays a role in that brain balance, but then we also know that nitric oxide is also involved in these processes. We need nitric oxide to signal the neurotransmitter release. We need estrogen to signal that as well too. We need both of them to make sure the conversation of these neurotransmitters is happening. These neurotransmitters also balance our temperature regulation. So here come the hot flashes and night sweats. We should be thinking, my estrogen is low, my neurotransmitters are imbalanced. What can I do to prevent future or more of this? What can I do? And then sleep. I think the biggest thing I notice about the shifts for myself, but also many of my patients, is the sleep pattern is so impacted when estrogen drops and even when it's fluctuating. I can see my patients who are they're in perimenopause, their cycles are fluctuating and their sleep cycles fluctuate depending on where their estrogen levels are at any one time during the month. And we can
Yeah,
definitely see that.
sometime of the month you're okay, other times of the month not okay, and you're just like
Yes.
and that's why it feels like such a moving target when it's so inconsistent.
Yes. And that moving target gets frustrating for women.
Mhm.
And then what do women do when they get frustrated? They don't have an answer, so they start to either ignore a sign and just continue to drink the wine or have the vanilla latte or all the things that are contributing to oxidative stress. But they also start apologizing for the fact that, well, I'm just like this because I'm in that time of life. And as you and I spoke before the recording, this is something I really want to help women get through is we need to stop apologizing for what's happening to us and recognize that we can be proactive about our health, but we also don't have to apologize for sweating during a meeting. And we don't have to apologize for being a little cranky in the morning because I didn't get good sleep the night before. But we do need to talk about it. We can't. So I think there's a way we can have these conversations and encourage our friends and our loved ones to have these conversations, bringing men into the conversation. I am always impressed. I have some single girlfriends who will say, hey, guess what? I was talking to this guy I'm dating, and he wanted to ask me how menopause was going for me because he's really interested in the shift. And I thought, there you go. We are having enough of the conversation that we're starting to get men talking about it, and getting everybody into the conversation normalizes it. And those erratic shifts and those, fluctuating signs and symptoms are nothing we need to apologize for. There are things we need to discuss, address, and help each other through.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I love that. And I love that we get to have this conversation so that we can explore, what women can do. I mean, I think a lot of us know that the lifestyle strategies are so important. And I'll raise my hand and say, I am doing all, if not most, if not all the lifestyle strategies. And I still feel like I could use a little support. Yeah. And so, especially around good energy, especially around never feeling winded, having, good sleep, just feeling alive in my body. I feel like even though we know our bodies are changing, there's a part of me that's not willing to let go of the things that matter most, the energy and the capacity and being physically active. Like, I don't want to give those up. And I think because my mom is such a big inspiration to me of what I've seen her do, I'm like, I don't think I have to. I was just on the phone
Yeah.
with her yesterday, and she's retiring in 2 months. It's
Oh,
a big
exciting.
deal. And we were talking about her moving over her medical plan, her healthcare plan. She was really struggling with making this decision. She's like, because she's like, I don't know how to plan for the future. There's nothing wrong with me right now. And she was really frustrated. I was like, do you know how many 65-year-old women would love to say, there is nothing wrong with me right now, and I'm trying to plan for my future healthcare? She's like, I just don't know what's going to come up. I'm like, well, let's just keep doing what you're doing so nothing comes up. Like, like
Right.
I'm like, you
Right.
keep doubling down on the things that you're doing. And, she's taking nitric oxide every day. She's taking her creatine, her omegas. She's loving up on her gut. She's very physically active. Like, she's really checking all the boxes. And so, like, what I'm asking from you is, like, what are some of the things that we can bring in to support ourselves? So while we do feel the shifts, while we know that we're in this hormone inflection point, this metabolic inflection point, this neuroendocrine transition, that we can keep staying the course, doing the things that we love, all while protecting our body.
I think this is an excellent question because I think when we break it down like that, it really comes back to ensuring that your energy, that you stay energized. And where does that start? That starts with mitochondrial health.
Mhm.
So if we are ensuring blood flow to deliver oxygen to all the cells, then that oxygen gets used in the ATP production cycle. That is just our raw ingredient energy. What does energy do for us? It allows us to stay physically active. It allows us to, sure, I might run up the stairs and be winded at the top of the stairs, but I'm going to recover pretty quickly. And I think a lot of that performance recovery is things we take for granted until we don't have them anymore. So if you had to, run and catch an airport shuttle and you couldn't catch your breath for 5 minutes, we should be concerned that you're not getting that mitochondrial support to give you that energy boost. The other things that equate to that, what can I add to that? I would add that every day there's a way to build nitric oxide in your body that doesn't necessarily have to use a supplement. So breath work and nasal breathing. We've talked about this on a podcast before where getting up every morning and engaging in some kind of breath work. Now, the breath work I practice is also meant to regulate my nervous system. So I'm a big fan of the 4-7-8 breath or the box breath because I'm doing two things. I'm naturally building nitric oxide in my body, in my blood vessels, which opens my blood flow, delivers nutrients, delivers oxygen. But I'm also toning and calming my autonomic nervous system so I am better able to adapt to the stresses of the day. I happen to do it while I'm grounding in the backyard. And where I live, it's not always super warm and pleasant in the
No.
morning, but I still get out there in my bare feet in the grass because that feels good to me. That's a way for me to connect to nature and to the earth and feel that grounded element while I'm also doing this nitric oxide and autonomic nervous system toning breath work. I
Mm.
can make sure my diet is full of leafy green vegetables that are rich in dietary nitrates. They not only provide fiber and lots of other additional vitamins, nutrients, phytonutrients, and polyphenols, but I'm directly providing the substrate to make nitric oxide when I'm eating arugula, spinach, kale, beets and beet greens, celery. I can do it in juicing form. I can do it in smoothie form. I can do it in I'm a big fan of vegetables for breakfast, so I can build those
You're a
things
big
there.
fan of vegetables for every meal.
I am. I am a big vegetable fan. Exactly. And that's why Christmas was hard for me. There were not a lot of vegetables in Southern California where I was for Christmas. So I'll come to your house next time.
Yeah, lots of green juices, lots of arugula and veggies, like, I'm a big fan. I was just interviewing with Kelly LeVeque, and she's got the Fab 4, which is the kind of the really robust kind of cruciferous veggies, but then the green leafy vegetables and then the protein and kind of the healthy fats, the omega-based fats, and that, how do we make that in our plate every single day? Like, we can keep it as simple as that.
As simple as that. I'm a big fan of simplicity in the diet as well too. Yeah, so other things that build nitric oxide are things that we avoid. So we try to avoid things that are going to reduce nitric oxide conversion in the body. And there's a whole list of them, but it starts with repairing some oxidative stress. It starts with not using things that damage the oral and the intestinal microbiome that prevent us from converting nitrates to nitric oxide. That's things like antiseptic mouthwashes and rinses and things like that. Hopefully, none of your patients or your followers are still smoking or vaping, but we get those habits out of the lifestyle. We reduce or eliminate alcohol. We get regular exercise, but maybe your exercise program has to change a little bit. If your body's not adapting to what you've always done, then adapt the exercise to where you are now. That is part of losing exercise tolerance as estrogen declines. But we can shift those patterns and see different results with a different approach. There's nothing wrong with changing up your exercise program. It's okay that your routine that from 10 years ago doesn't fit you now. And then of course, looking at the body as a whole and really thinking about this, how do I relieve my symptoms today? Whether it's I'm feeling short of breath, I have brain fog, my blood pressure is creeping up, my doctors told me I'm insulin resistant. Well, maybe then it's time for supplementation. And this is where Berkeley Life provides a really simple protocol of 2 capsules a day. I take more, but 2 capsules a day of the nitric oxide support. And
I take more.
yeah, because you and I are energized people and we need that little boost. But again, it's paying attention to our mitochondrial health.
Yeah.
And then now Berkeley Life is really thrilled to be offering a menopause and heart health support.
I
And this
love
is,
this. It's
yeah,
literally by my bedside. I take it in the morning.
yeah,
I do this, and then you got yours. Yes. I do 2 nitric oxide, and I do 1 of these. I've been playing with just 1. That's my little combo for
yeah.
the morning.
That's
Yeah.
kind of what I do too. I take 2 nitric oxide support, and then in the menopause formula is a purified pollen complex with some organic turmeric powder. The pollen are it's plant pollens. They're really well studied for their activity where estrogen meets neurotransmitter function in the brain. So this is the activity of this supplement. I take 1 pollen capsule a day and I notice my anxiety is reduced, my irritability is gone. And as I told you, I've been experimenting with taking it for 2 weeks and then not taking it for 2 weeks. It's not a good thing when I don't take the pollen complex. My sleep is disrupted. My anxiety comes out for me in my sleep with anxious dreams, sometimes nightmares. I'm frequently talking in my sleep and oftentimes kicking in my sleep too, fighting somebody off. I don't want to be sleeping like that. It's not restful. It's not good for my nervous system. It is not good to have that stress response in the middle of the night for many reasons, but mostly because it's also not serving my mitochondria very well. There's a lot of energy need that is wasted on that emotional
You're like, "I could have used
stress.
that on a walk."
Exactly. Instead of
Instead of
kicking
battling it
somebody
out
away.
in my sleep. Devices like Whoop and Aura measure that. It's called stress sleep. Like,
Yes.
and you can have a percentage of stressful sleep that is contributing to your overall sleep quality. Well, it's not contributing to sleep quality, it's diminishing sleep quality. But just note that it does wear and tear on you over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what happens when our sleep is disrupted? We wake up in the morning sluggish, unmotivated, not energized. And now it's harder to go to the gym. It's harder to take the walk. It's harder to be kind to the children as you're getting them ready to school. All those things start to add up. And I think that's the biggest thing I feel by taking the Berkeley Life supplementation. I have consistent energy every day and I wake up motivated for the day ahead of me. And to me, that equates to being energized, to having mitochondrial excuse me, mitochondrial energy to get me through the day. I am taking an additional dose of nitric oxide support in the afternoon because I do like to get out and hike and I like to go to yoga and we're active in these platforms here all day long and it takes a lot of energy. So I keep mine boosted because while I'm also eating those dietary nitrates, doing the grounding, the breath work, avoiding the toxic elements that degrade nitric oxide in the body. And the other thing I think it's doing for me is I have a little more of a positive attitude. And I'm
Mhm.
always a pretty positive
Very
person.
positive person. Yeah, you're one of the most positive people that I know, and I love that. That
Thank you.
positivity really radiates.
Well, thank you. And I notice though that when my brain is not fully supported with good blood flow, it's easier for those negative thoughts to creep in. And they don't serve anybody well. They certainly don't serve me well, and they don't help me serve other people well. So I want to do everything I can to make sure that my brain stays happy and my mindset stays positive.
I love that, Kathy. And I was thinking about, the way that, people talk about you in terms of your energy quality and your energy. And can you imagine a day where someone doesn't point that out, right? You're just,
Right.
that you're like, oh, you're so energized. You have such good energy. You've got such positivity. Like, you kind of get used to people pointing this out about you. And then, I never want there to be a day where people are just like, man, like, that ain't it. Like, that isn't the energy I'm used to
I
seeing.
right. I don't want that either. I love it when people who can read auras come up and tell me what they see in my aura. I have been told, you act like sunshine. I'm like, great. That's so great. But then my partner will sometimes look at me and go, how are you so happy in the morning? And my answer is usually that, I'm looking forward to my breakfast. And yes, it's my support, my Berkeley Life
I love
support. Yeah. And also the great coworkers I have at Berkeley Life. They are
a
also a
great
big
team.
part of my positive mojo every day. We're here to educate and change the world, and we're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about I don't skip a day on the nitric oxide, mainly, as you know, and I've shared here on the show, that there's a lot of cardiovascular disease in my family. And it really begins to rear its ugly head for many of my family members, my sister being the outlier where it started in her 40s, but in their 50s. Is usually when we start to see 50s and 60s is when I start to get the pre-diabetes and the, checking in about statins and blood pressure is creeping or even stents are getting put in. And so not only do I want to protect my energy because at the end of the day, that's a proxy of how we show up, but also I want to future proof my health. And so I think about nitric oxide, Berkeley Life's nitric oxide, and the menopause and heart health support as an insurance policy that I'm taking. So not only do I notice a big difference in terms of my energy and my oxygen capacity and resilience, but I also know that even though I'm not feeling any of those changes, I just had a carotid scan. I've got carotid arteries of like a 14-year-old right now. I want to make sure that coming into the coming decades that I've really done all the things during this kind of zone of transition where lots of things are up for review and I can feel that they're up for review, that I really check the box in protecting my future health.
Yeah, and that's, not only wise, but why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to do that? I think I've told you before, when I was 10 years old, I decided I was going to live to 110. And I've got quite a ways to go. So if I'm going to live to 110, I want it to be vibrant and vital, and I want to be contributing to society at that point. I don't want it to be sitting in a recliner. I'll have you know, we have a rule in our house. We never have a recliner in our home. It will never happen.
No, I know my dad had a recliner. I think he still does.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up, 2 things I remember my dad did. He ate all white foods. We're talking white cheese, ranch dressing, sour cream, and I watched him be inflamed. He was on heart medications. My dad was put on heart medications when he was in his late 20s. I remember him always sitting in that recliner, so sedentary lifestyle, and eating a lot of ultra processed foods. And I just learned from a really early age, no to both. No
Yeah.
recliners, no ultra processed foods.
Right, right. If you have a back issue, get a nice rocking chair. At least you can have some mobility there and you can, yeah, stay comfortable, but Yeah, we have to keep this energy flow going. And especially today, the modern world is fairly stressful for a lot of people right now. And in order to take care of our families and our communities, our local communities, those of us who are energized are going to be the ones to lead the charge and keep us sane and healthy and happy. So let's get more friends in our circle to do that with us.
Well, yeah, and I think that is the call to action that we're bringing to the table today, both you and I, Kathy. We're so in alignment here. Where how do we boost that mitochondrial function? How do we boost blood flow so that you have incredible resilience and energy? And so, I know, Kathy, you gave some really amazing ways in terms of lifestyle strategies for implementing more nitric oxide production in the body. But I have a feeling a lot of my ladies are looking for a little bit more support. And we talked about the nitric oxide support supplement, and also we talked about the menopause and heart health support supplement today as well. Not just for blood flow, but for mitigating neurotransmitter support and sleep support and mood and stress response system support, all of that wrapped into this beautiful supplement right here. So if you're looking for a game-changing supplement that's going to be addressing your circulatory system, oxidative stress, managing a lot of the perimenopause and menopause symptoms, it's all in one place. And I have 15% off. It's Thrive15. And you can just go to berkeleylife.com, put the code in Thrive15. I'll have it in the show notes, and go and get your menopause and heart health support supplement.
Thank you. And we are happy to offer that discount to your listeners. And I think one thing to sort of finish on here is that women are going to feel the difference. I hear all the time about this is a supplement that you actually feel. And honestly, within, just a few days of taking the menopause and heart health support, women are responding saying, I have more energy. I feel more like I can bounce out of bed better in the morning. My sleep is starting to improve. I wasn't so stressed out at the annual or the weekly meeting this week. And so it is an impact you can feel right away. And when you'll really notice it is if you take it for several days and then you stop. You'll notice like, oh, that was doing something for my mitochondria. I was feeling more energized. I was feeling that boost in and that pick me up that I needed. And then, yes, relief of symptoms today, but resilience for your heart for the future. And that's really what we want to help women do.
It's the yes and, Kathy.
Yes,
It's the
and
yes and. That's
it
what I'm
is
talking
yes,
about.
and
I have not taken a break, as I told you, since I got my hands on it because I just
yeah,
don't wanna know what it feels like on the other side. Like, I need all the energy that I can get. And also in a world where we are inundated with so many freaking supplements, we obviously want something that's actually going to move the needle for us in a big way. And I'm telling you right now, you should see our cabinets. The amount of supplements that we have, it is insane. My son the other day, he's like, "What?" Because he's a big organizer, and he's just like, "Well, what are you guys gonna do with all of this?" My little 5-year-old is worried about our supplement situation. And, I've got my staples. You know where my staples are? They're at the bedside. They're in the
yeah,
office. Like, they're with me. They're not in the cupboard somewhere. And the reason why they're my staples is because I can feel the difference. And so I just wanted to speak to that as well, is that I talk about non-negotiable supplementation all the time, and blood flow has got to be a part of that non-negotiable stack that you're doing, particularly in perimenopause and beyond.
absolutely. It is the river that flows is the river that grows, right? So we're going to continue to grow in this transition of our life. We're not going to apologize for the changes that we experience as we get older. We're going to reflect on them, share them, and grow our communities with healthy blood flow and a little more mojo.
That's right. That is right. And I think that's exactly what we all want and we all deserve, because at the end of the day, women are going to keep showing up. It's almost as if we don't have a choice. It's just how our DNA is programmed to do. But wouldn't it be nice if you had the energy and the capacity to really do it on your terms?
Yeah,
And that's what this
absolutely.
is all about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Kathy, honey, it's such a pleasure to get to converse with you at the beginning of this new year as everyone's stepping into 2026, wanting to feel more energized. And I'm hoping that they're walking away from this conversation today feeling like they have the tools to do so.
I hope so too. It's been my pleasure to be here and see you again. And I know we're going to see each other again soon. So we'll just keep the discussion going. But in the meantime, get your grounding in, get your breath work in, eat your leafy greens, and try your nitric oxide support.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.